Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wholesale Change, the webcast and podcast from Distribution Strategy Group, where we offer thought leadership for wholesale change agents like you, because if you're on this podcast or webcast, you probably are a wholesale change agent. My name's Ian Heller. I'll be your co-host today with Distribution Strategy Group. I'd like to introduce my business partner. He's the big dog of big data and the doctor of distribution, Jonathan Bime, PhD. How are you today, Jonathan?
Dilapidated. How are you?
You can't be dilapidated. It's a delightful day.
Well, it's the wonderful of you to say.
Well, hey, we're delighted to have you with us today. Speaking of delightful, Wholesale Change is brought to you by Epicor. For nearly 50 years, Epicor has helped distributors stay ahead with flexible, powerful solutions designed to increase sales, streamline operations, and improve customer experience. Epicor's industry-leading ERP solutions are built specifically to meet the unique needs of wholesalers with everything needed to grow your sales, profits, and productivity. While, of course, distancing yourself from your competition, Epicor is focused on the things that matter to you: work queues, PO variance queues, kitting, assembly and production orders, advanced inventory forecasting, VMI, and special project pricing. They build their software using industry best practices and 50 years of distribution experience. But Epicor solutions are far more than just tools for pick, pack, and ship. Fully cloud-based with a modern UI, Epicor offers complete, robust e-commerce solutions, powerful BI and analytics tools, modern API and EDI, value-added services, WMS, virtual assistants, and much more. You can learn more about how Epicor helps thousands of wholesalers succeed by visiting epicor.com. Thank you, Epicor, for your sponsorship. You've been doing it all year long. We appreciate it. They're the reason that we can bring this show to you. So, Jonathan, I appear to have caused a little bit of controversy this week or in the last week.
That would be a first.
That would be a first. I know, my opening my big mouth. But so look, the premise of this series that I just wrote, which is called, from master distributors to marketplaces, is that the core value add of master distributors has traditionally been a really wide assortment available quickly. Now, master distributors have historically been able to stock more than a regular distributor, any individual distributor, because they cover a wider market, right? So the classic industry that's always had, or one of the industries that's always had master distributor support, is office supplies, right? So SP Richards and United Stationers, now Ascendant, had these massive warehouses. So let's say you're in Chicago and there are 100 office supplies branches and stores. Each one of them only covers a small part of the market, so they can only have a few thousand SKUs on hand, but the master distributor backstops all of them. So by definition, the master wholesaler, master distributor can have a broader range of SKUs than anybody, because it's stocking for all of Chicagoland, not just for one distributor, right? It's just math.
Yeah. So one variant of that is your long tail is their head.
Yeah, right. So something you might sell twice a year, the master wholesaler may sell 20. And so they can go much farther down the tail of SKUs, right? And so, however, one of the insights, at least I hope it was an insight in the article, is that marketplaces have taken that very, very broad assortment, which used to be sort of protected behind the distributor or the dealer, and put it front and center in front of the customer, right? So it used to be, and this is in all kinds of distribution, and whether you're talking about power transmission or HVAC or whatever, if you had a hard to find item, you would call the distributor and they would look it up for you, right? I mean, in the old days, they had racks and racks of catalogs, and then you had sourcing operations that would call different distributors to try to find what it was that you were looking for. If my company didn't carry it, and then you went to different websites and you had deals with manufacturers, and you had basically this expert sourcing operation that the distributor operated to find stuff that was hard to find, hard to get.
And they would message on their ability to source well, right?
That's correct. Right. If you we can find it for you, right? That's a good point. Now, with marketplaces, the number or the frequency of hard to find products has come way down, because there's very little, as long as you know what you're looking for. You may not always, which is when you need a distributor for sure. But if you know what you're looking for, then you can find it in probably more than one location, maybe many locations, because the world has changed. Not in addition to marketplaces, you've got manufacturers selling direct now. You can search every distributor's assortment on, you can go to Google and basically search every distributor's website simultaneously. Bit of an overstatement, but not by much. And so technology has just sort of rendered that notion of a hard to find product and super wide availability obsolete. And to me, of all the businesses out there that are disadvantaged by this, master distributors are near the top of the list, because they were, sort of that backstop of very broad, superior availability and quick delivery for many different distributors. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that was sort of and then I used Berkshire eSupply as an example. And the reason I chose them, and I think they're a fine company, I think they're well run, but I will say this, they've really doubled down on this notion of helping small and mid-sized distributors succeed online, right? I mean, their whole, and this is part of their heritage, right? They've always been around these small and mid-sized distributors. And so if you go to their homepage or somewhere on their website, it says, that they are a dynamic organization dedicated to supporting independent distributors with the products and services required to compete in the rapidly evolving industrial marketplace. The problem is that what they've really been betting on is that they could help make a bunch of small and mid-size distributors competitive online, and for a very nominal fee. And I think it used to be about $15,000. I'm not sure what it is now. They would actually deliver a white label site to you. It would have your company's name on it, and you could add your SKUs to it. But what it would have, and I think it's now they claim 2 million SKUs that they would make available through your website. And I think the notion was, if they could get a whole bunch of these mid-size and small industrial distributors or distributors of various kinds to load up with this Berkshire eSupply built site and Berkshire's 2 million SKUs, they would have many, many, many sellers to online to drive sales of the products they stocked. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So here's where we run into trouble, because that's not where the market is going. The market is not increasingly, because of marketplaces primarily, but this was happening to some degree even before the rise of marketplaces with the Grangers and MSCs and others of the world. Increasingly, business buyers are going to a smaller number of large websites, marketplaces in particular, rather than, which is sort of counter to Berkshire strategy of building a large number of small websites. And so it just looked to me like Berkshire needs a new or an updated strategy. Now, do you agree? Go ahead.
You go ahead, please.
Well, do you agree that that the world's moving towards a smaller number of larger websites?
Certainly for simple transactions. So I think let's set the table again with this idea, which we've discussed in previous episodes, that a lot of our thesis about the role of marketplaces is where simple transactions come into play. And when we say simple transactions, we mean things that can be delivered common carrier. So there's not much on the logistic front, and they require minimal to no value add, either before or after the sale, right? So there's not a lot of information conveyed before the sale. Perhaps somebody knows what they want to buy, and there's definitely not value add after the sale. So a lot of this discussion is about what's happening with simple transactions, and with the understanding that the complex transactions will remain the province of distributors for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think also, just to go one step further with defining a simple transaction, a complex product is normally a complex transaction because you need training, or it needs commissioning or installation or configuration, right? But even simple products can be part of a complex transaction.
Right.
For example, if it's being sold into an industrial vending environment, which is, by the way, is a great service that Berkshire offers, or if it's delivered to a Kanban production line, or if it's part of a big project for a construction site and it's part of the material that's in the bid and in the bid submittal. Okay, even though it's a simple product, it's part of a complex transaction because the logistics around it or something else is complex. So it's not just complex products versus simple products, it's complex transactions and relationships versus simple products and relationships, right?
Yeah, really good clarification. And so the context of what we're discussing today is about sectors and companies that have lots of simple transactions that are therefore more vulnerable to other digital players, whether it's a competitor, distributor, whether it's a manufacturer, whether it's a retailer like Home Depot, or as we're focusing on, marketplaces.
Yeah, frankly, master distributors over the years have focused on simple products and simple transactions.
That's right. Now, by the way, we should say to our audience, we love questions, and we've got a number of chat comments queued up here. Should we address those now, Ian?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the first one is whiffing here. First one is that being able to search vast selection does not always mean that buyers can find it. Meaning, so if you go to a site that's got 100 million SKUs, it's putting that much more effort on the search engine to help you get to the right thing. So one could imagine one spends more time searching, particularly if the quality of the product data is lacking in some way. So the search is much harder with millions of SKUs than hundreds of thousands. Now, a follow-up from that same commenter is your proviso of if you know what you want is more important than ever in digital differentiation online. Can you comment on that, Ian?
Yeah, I think, look, this is a friend of the show, right? So in fact, we're going to have him on sometime in the near future. And he's an expert.
And his initials are?
Yeah. So I think, look, the reason that you've got a lot of AI tools being developed to recognize product is that sometimes, well, first, it can be fast and convenient, but also sometimes human beings don't recognize products, right? Or know what they need. And so I think, just saying I can find anything online does make this assumption, which I think is his point, that you actually know what you're looking for, and sometimes you don't, right? So I'll give you a couple of examples. I've talked to the Food Equipment Industry Suppliers Association, FISA, a few months ago. And, what they say is when they have people place orders online, they have a very, very high return rate because people don't really know what they need. Okay. And they often buy the wrong thing because the products are complex. So I think that's a fair comment.
Well, and I think to add to that, if you think about where automation fits in, where AI fits in, that dialogue of helping you figure out what you want, a lot of that is going to remain with humans for a very, very long time. I mean, I know there are selectors and configurators, and that's going to change things somewhat. But that basic figuring out what do I want, what category do I want? Having grown up in AI, I don't see that one being solved within this decade. And maybe
well, it's kind of like our view on sales reps, right? Is that you kind of have this often generational explanation that millennials and Generation Zs don't want to see salespeople. And our view is that customers need salespeople when they have complex needs. They don't need them if they can just go online and buy it themselves. That is really not. There may be some correlation to generations, but I mean, frankly, my wife and I were watching a movie the other night, and there was this guy in his 50s, and he was trying to use Travelocity, and he called it Travel O City to his daughter, right? And we're like, oh, come on. I mean, this isn't 1995 anymore. I mean, people of all generations are pretty good with the internet now. And the same is true with sales reps. I mean, if you have a complex set of needs, I'm building a production line, I need to do a plant turnaround, I'm trying to set up industrial vending, I've got a Kanban system, I'm managing purchasing for 12 large job sites. You need sales reps to coordinate that stuff from the distributor. It's not about the age of the customer. It's about the complexity of the value proposition. And I think, that's the same in this case, right? So anyway, we got a bunch of comments. You might want to keep going through them.
You bet. So next comment is Berkshire eSupply seems to be only e-commerce friendly if the distributor signs up for their private label website products. It leaves out a huge segment of distributors that already have e-com and want to enhance what they have. Goes on to say, totally agree with your assessment of marketplaces vis-a-vis simpler transactions.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know the answer to the first one. I'm not close enough to Berkshire's. I will say if they're demanding that you carry their private label products, rather than just enhancing what you already have, that would be a problem. I appreciate that they agree. So keep going.
Okay, next one. if you ask Zorro for price on 10,000 units of an item that they sell on the marketplace, they will not even entertain a lower price for the quantity, for instance.
I would say if you're asking for 10,000 units, that's not a simple transaction, right? Because that's probably some kind of scheduled buy and negotiated price. So I think that reinforces our point that marketplaces are for simple transactions, not for a 10,000 unit buy.
Awesome. Next question. This is a big one, and maybe we'll be answering over the course of the discussion. Do you think Verus? You know what? Let's hold this one.
Okay.
Let's hold this one because I think let's get further into the discussion and then we'll come back to this. It's a terrific question.
We will get to this though, to the person who asked it.
Yeah. So let's keep going in.
Okay. Gosh, we've got a bunch more in here. Okay. So, so the Berkshire, so in a nutshell, you've got Berkshire, which is, their core value to us, like all master distributors, has been at least somewhat commoditized because having unique access to the assortment and fast availability is, something that you can get in a lot of different places now. They're betting on the e-commerce success of small distributors, and we don't think that's really where e-commerce is growing. I mean, most of the small distributors have this much of their sales coming in from e-commerce. Even if it grew during the pandemic, it probably didn't grow as fast as the pure e-commerce sellers who were up by extraordinary amounts. And so I laid out 4 ways that Berkshire can grow their business. One is, first of all, broaden the value prop for those distributors they service, de-emphasize the website. And I know they've got eSupply on their name, but if you believe that these small and mid-sized distributors are going to differentiate by adding complexity to their value propositions, then that's not helping them succeed more online. I mean, you can continue to do that. I'm sure they appreciate it. But, for example, Berkshire's got this industrial vending program. That's fantastic. Can they go and add a whole bunch of other ways to enable value-added services that marketplaces aren't likely to offer for these small distributors? Can you aggregate the ability to do rentals and repairs and light assembly and kitting, and can you do services in these Berkshire massive warehouses that your distributors can go and resell, or can you help them set up to do those services? I mean, to me, that's a really fertile ground, right? Secondly, Berkshire can sell on marketplaces. I mean, they're really ideally suited to be a seller on a Zorro, or a seller on eBay, commercial, industrial, or seller on Walmart. And by the way, there are thousands and thousands of distributors selling on all those sites and a bunch of others. Third, they can build their own marketplace, right? Where they could just, and that would sort of take their upside down marketplace model. And I won't go into that other than to say I wrote about it in the article, and turn it right side up. What if Berkshire was the seller and all their distributors could sell through Berkshire eSupply's marketplace? And so they became a marketplace outlet, and they jumped on this trend of people wanting these big marketplace sites. What if they were the industrial version of Amazon Business, and they became a marketplace, and it was a place where their distributors could sell and their manufacturers could sell? Because one thing that Amazon Business doesn't do well is industrial, right? I mean, they have an MRO industrial category, but it's very meager compared to like its office supplies and Jansan offering, right? Which leads me to the fourth idea, which is they could collaborate with Verus. And Verus is a new company set up by what used to be called Office Depot. And I want to hold off on that for just a second and ask you what you think, or what our audience thinks of these growth ideas for Berkshire.
Well, one question I have is the combination or partnership or whatever with Verus. I mean, they're clearly different product categories, right? Berkshire is industrial.
Yes.
Right. So how do you see that coming together? If in this imaginary world?
Yeah. Okay. So I think, and I go into this in the third article, I think, so Verus, so what we used to know as Office Depot has broken into two publicly held companies, right?
Right.
The retail side of it is still called Office Depot, right? And they compete with the Staples retail stores, which is not entirely retail, because a lot of small home office purchases, their customers go there. That may even be the majority of their business. I don't know. Then they have a new company called the ODP Corporation. All right. So completely different companies now, Office Depot and the ODP Corporation. The ODP Corporation is the old corporate stationer business, the delivery business, right? So this is the trucks pull up to the commercial office building, and the guy rolls in with a dolly full of copy paper and ink and break room supplies and Jansan products, right? So that business is still out there. Amazon has taken a lot of it, which is why Staples is much smaller reportedly than it used to be, and so is Office Depot. But there is still a lot of that B2B, and they have established a brand new division called Veris, which is at goveris.com, GOVARIS.com. And what they've done is they've hired like a dozen former Amazon business executives. Prentice Wilson, who was the VP general manager for Amazon Business, who launched it, their CTO, and 10 other executives. And I wrote an article about that a few months ago. And so, which is really smart. Okay, so Office Depot has split into two business units. ODP Corporation has hired basically the former Amazon business team, and they're going to, I don't know for sure, apparently build a competitor to Amazon Business. Here's the danger there, Jonathan. It's very, very hard to compete with Amazon on anything, especially when they have momentum. And yet, and we've seen this before, we've talked about it, the most common weakness we see in executives, at least I see in executives who change companies, is they think what made them successful in their last company will make them successful in their new job, right? So whatever I did that made me successful in my old job, that's what I'm going to do in my new job. And a lot of times that's just not the case. And my personal belief is that if Veris just tries to build an alternative to Amazon Business, same markets, same products, et cetera, there will always be lesser than, because it's impossible to close the gap on what's probably a $35 billion company at this point, operated by the world's best marketplace company.
What if it's a different model? What if it's not competitive?
That's what I'm suggesting. You asked why industrial. This is why industrial, because Amazon is very, very weak in industrial.
But I mean, what if it's not first party and third party? That's what I'm saying. What if it's purely a marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, majority of Amazon sales are already third party now.
Okay.
And so, I think I don't see how that's an advantage. I think, I mean, suppliers are reconciled to the fact Amazon's so big now, very, very few companies other than Nike refuse to sell to Amazon.
But again, I mean, if it's a more attractive model from I don't have to worry that they're, using my data for nefarious means, it's more attractive terms. We've heard that it is challenging. I mean, Amazon is demanding of their third-party sellers, right?
Yeah.
And so what if you came up with similar products, but a more favorable model for the third-party seller?
Yeah, it's great, but you got to get the customers there. It's not just getting the suppliers there. And customers are wedded. I mean, what did you say before the call? You go to Amazon every day, right? It's just convenient. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And even when you think about going somewhere else, I mean, I do this too. Yeah, I need like 3 or 4 things that are unrelated. I try to buy it on Walmart.com because I want to help that poor little company compete. Yeah. Or I'll go to.
It's so charitable of you, Ian.
I know. Well, I worry about those guys at Walmart.
It is the season, right?
Yeah, right. Right. It is the season to be charitable at Walmart.
Yeah.
But you often come back to Amazon because you get these 3. I bought a set of micrometers, right, for my shop and my garage.
Yeah.
And I needed toner for my computer, and I wanted this protein powder. I mean, where else are you going to go to get them all the next day?
There are well-formed furrows in my neural circuitry to my hand, to my mouse, to Amazon. I mean, I know, right?
Right. So how are you going to get them? But in industrial MRO, that's not the case yet, because they don't own that market. So my point is that Veris should do something outside the box, or at least consider it. And what a great marriage. Veris and Berkshire E-Supply. You've got 2 people. You need Berkshire, who needs a big outlet for their products because they don't sell direct. Well, they could, but they don't. You've got Veris, who needs to differentiate from Amazon Business. Why not say, you know what, we're going to be the industrial version?
I hear it.
I mean, I'm not saying it would succeed, but at least it's differentiated, and it might. So we got a bunch more comments. You want to start walking through them again?
Let's take the one that we had deferred. So do you think Veris can be successful combining P2P and B2B marketplaces versus bigger players like Amazon or SAP, Ariba, Coupa, et cetera?
I think that if, like I said, if Verus tries to build just an ordinary alternative to existing marketplaces with no differentiation, they will have a very hard time succeeding. And if you look at these marketplaces, with the exception of Zorro, which has quite a bit of industrial product, for the most part, they're all commercial. And so, no, I don't think they will. I mean, you never know, right? I mean, look, that if I help build Amazon business, I'm going to have a lot of confidence, right? You have to be careful that doesn't transform into hubris, and because you still need a better strategy. You still need to differentiate.
I wonder if part of the differentiation, or a part of the differentiation, is you are actually better at industrial. So Amazon touts 300 million SKUs. That's like one for every 18 people, 19 people on the planet or something. Probably there's a lot of duplication in there, but I wonder if Verus is great. We're going to do industrial, and we're going to crush it even more than Amazon in terms of assortment. Sure. So like if you boil down those 300 million SKUs to the actual number of unique SKUs, I don't think it's 300 million SKUs. Whatever the number is, but they got a lot of SKUs. I can't debate that. But could Verus do a better job at industrial? Effectively a niche. Could they do a better job in the niche of industrial than Amazon and become the go-to place?
If they partnered with Berkshire eSupply, who is by definition an industrial seller.
Okay.
The two of them, because if they partner, so let's say that Berkshire eSupply says they've got 2 million SKUs. Now, I wonder if you look at all the suppliers to Berkshire eSupply and said, okay, not only are we going to stock some of your products, we want you to ship direct on the rest. It's probably what, 4 million SKUs, 6 million SKUs? Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you did that, if Verus said, look, we'll handle the whole marketplace build, we know how to build the software. And then, in 2 months, we're going to launch with 5 million industrial SKUs.
We got the back end, you got the front end.
Exactly. You would immediately have I don't know if it's a killer assortment, but it would be an amazing assortment of products for the industrial market.
Okay, let's move on to another question. By the way, audience, thank you for questions. We love them. So we have a comment: sales engineers' knowledge is still key due to the big amount of products, multiple brands, offering a faster time to market. But how the distributors should develop these skills in an efficient way and keep with the manufacturers releasing new products? I guess that's a question, right? How should the distributor develop these skills in an efficient way?
Yeah, I think this actually relates to another question that came earlier, or comment, which is good digital discovery for simple product frees up your best salespeople to serve more of your customers and solve their hardest problems. And I think, look, these two people who are going back and forth in the comments are sort of reinforcing each other's opinions, and they're right. Look, I believe, and I think you would agree, that your customer-facing people need more technical skills than ever, right?
Yes, and we hear that routinely from manufacturers, right? Right.
They don't need the distributors to sell the simple transactions. And the distributors want to hang on to them, right? And they should. There are definitely ways to go about that. But what marketplaces cannot do is offer in-person advice. You can't even call Amazon to place an order. You can't call them. You've got to buy online. You can't ask a question about a product. The more distributors offer value that way, because their customer-facing people are super well trained, right? They really understand the products. They're very technical. Then the more value you can add to customers, generally speaking. And I think someone else is commenting is, well, and that kind of frees up your salespeople. If you do that, if you make it easy to buy simple stuff from a distributor, then you're not wasting the sales reps' orders with them writing down stuff that the customer could have bought online. I think that's a fair observation.
Yeah, and I think there's been this kind of pejorative joke about some of the large MRO players that when you call them, they answer the phone, they say, what part number?
Yeah, right, sure.
Right. And so this is going beyond that. And to the questioner's point, indeed, the sales engineer and or the sales rep's expertise can be key. Right.
Okay. So let's see. Someone's commenting on the growth ideas. So these are the 4 growth ideas I presented.
Yep.
So number 1, let me bring up both screens here. They're saying Broaden the value proposition to industrial distributors. They're saying they like it, but it's hard. 2 is sell on marketplaces. 2 is tough because then they're competing with their distribution customers. I completely agree with that, but I got to tell you, everybody's dealing with this channel conflict right now. And what we're seeing is most people's worst fears about channel conflict don't materialize when they actually do it. Now that's manufacturers who are competing with their own distributors. I think, you got to leave some room for margin in for your resellers, but for the most part, we're not seeing like the channel conflict materialize like people are fearing. Do you agree with that, Jonathan?
It's a 1 degree at a time kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look over a 5-year period, I think we will see more channel conflict. And again, it depends on the complexity of the transaction. So
Right.
the manufacturers who are actually selling online now, direct to end customers, the ones that are doing it, that have adopted it, the ones that are getting revenue, guess what? They look more like B2C products, meaning very, very simple transactions. So I think again, the answer is it depends on the complexity of the product and the transaction.
Okay. And then the fourth one, am I on the fourth one now? Let's see here. Oh no, build their own marketplace. That's third. Yeah, that's expensive, and it's going to be very hard to make that work. I agree with that. I mean, it's expensive, and there's no sure sign of success, but that is where the market is going, right? And then no opinion on the cooperation with Varus. So I know. I've been talking about how distributors need to build their own massive alternative to Amazon business. So let me throw one more out there, Jonathan. Let me throw one more out there. This is the high risk home run. What if all these companies collaborated? Okay, so I'll give you an example. For years, Staples tried to buy Office Depot. They're still trying to do it, or at least, recently they were. And it got shot down by the FTC. All right. Well, there's a new FTC now, right? The chair of the FTC is now Lena Khan, who has been a harsh critic of Amazon, wrote like a 93-page article about redefining what a monopoly is, redefining antitrust in the age of Amazon. I think you get a much friendlier perception about those two companies working together from the FTC than you historically would. What if those two companies worked with Berkshire eSupply, they worked with Varus, they worked with Grainger, they worked with, Ferguson, Motion Industries, and built literally a competitor to Amazon business? Because look, the good thing about competing with Amazon is you have a lot of company because they have a lot of enemies, right? Because when they consolidate industries, who loses? Not just the companies in the industry, software companies, transportation companies. And you could probably put together a consortium that would not only include a whole bunch of distributors with broad assortments to present the product, but you could also get UPS and FedEx involved, because it's not to their interest if Amazon keeps scooping up market share. You could probably get software companies involved. I mean, if you're an ERP maker and Amazon's business division winds up collapsing tens of thousands of distributors, your market gets smaller. So there's a whole consortium of people that could build a competitive B2B website or marketplace, in my view. And I know the odds are long on that, but there's a lot of logic behind it. So, okay. Gosh, I don't know that when we've ever had a more active set of questions. Someone wants me to repeat the 4 growth alternatives for Berkshire eSupply. So I'm going to do that real quick. This is in the Q&A, not the chat, Jonathan.
Right, I saw that.
Okay, so
I'm just going to throw up a slide, but go ahead.
Okay, I'm broadcasting a Word document right now, so I'll read it for you podcast listeners. But the 4 growth alternatives for Berkshire to me are: they can broaden their value proposition for industrial distributors. So instead of focusing so much on the e-commerce site, support everything that those distributors do, including really complex stuff. So add services, be very aggressive about supporting the sales that they do to support job sites and will calls and deliveries and stuff that's not coming in through the website. But I'm really intrigued by services. They can sell directly on marketplaces. I mean, they're well positioned to sell on, Zoro or Veris or eBay or Walmart or whatever. They can sell directly on those marketplaces. They can build their own marketplace. And what I like about this is there really isn't an industrial marketplace right now other than Zorro. And I think, Zorro's a fantastic company. They're very well operated. But I think their emphasis is a little different. It's more of a blend of commercial. It's less hardcore industrial. So and there's really nobody out there that really has a Berkshire eSupply kind of assortment that they could build their own marketplace with. And this would give their distributors an outlet to sell on, because the world's moving towards a small number of large marketplaces, which is what this could be, rather than a large number of small marketplaces like the current Berkshire model. Or they can collaborate with Veris and they could build a marketplace together to differentiate from Amazon Business with more of an industrial focus. So those are the four that I put up.
Yeah. So would this be a fair statement? The Zorro is more industrial supply, and the Berkshire eSupply is more industrial machinery and equipment.
Yeah, I mean, Zorro's got sort of a reflection of the Grainger assortment. I mean, they sell much more than Grainger, and they really operate those two businesses separately. But it sort of spans everything from janitorial to packaging and storage and commercial and some industrial, but they don't have like a lot of cutting tools and abrasives, at least I'm assuming, if they're like Grainger. And so,
by the way, Ian, I just asked my SIC question there. I hope you didn't. I don't know if you caught that.
I was teasing Jonathan last week because we had a guest on, and Jonathan said, "No, wait, you're technically an electrical distributor." And this gentleman, I guess technically his company is, but he doesn't think of himself that way. And I said, "Well, this is your data focus. You've got to classify everything."
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I'm a very excellent driver.
I'm a very excellent SIC question asker.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think anyway, I forgot where I was. You take it away. We got a whole bunch more comments. Do you want to read?
Yeah, let's keep marching down them. So there's one way Veris could compete around geographic territory control. I believe that Amazon Business still does not support territory controls. In other words, I'm a distributor and I only want to sell within zip codes and the territories I'm allowed to sell in my supplier contracts. In other words, Amazon does not help me enforce. If I'm a manufacturer, it doesn't help me enforce territories and areas of primary responsibility, right?
Well, and also I have to ship all over the country, even if that's hard for me.
Right. So if Veris enabled that, it would make them more attractive to more SMB distributors who are more regional. Also, they could create a better user experience than Amazon. Amazon Business is a familiar user experience, but that doesn't make it a good one.
Yeah, well, I think you could certainly. I mean, Amazon is not an omni-channel seller, right? I mean, you hear about how powerful it is and important it is to be omni-channel, but the biggest player out there is not. They're one channel, right? So they don't have local branches. I mean, their stores are too small and stock too little, and are too scattered to consider them branches. They don't have phone service. So I think the value of creating a separate marketplace is you could actually make it omni-channel if you wanted to. You could go to the marketplace and schedule a will call at a local branch and still maintain your sales rep relationship, which you can't do if you're selling through Amazon Business. So I think these are good points. And for a lot of these distributors, they don't want to sell on Amazon Business because I think he's right. I think you have to offer the product to everybody. You can't just say, well, this is a very heavy item, so I'm only going to ship in the Southwest where I operate. I'm not going to ship to Maine. I think if you sell it on Amazon Business, now I'm not sure, but I think you have to ship wherever the customer is. Someone else is saying flexibility is key. Amazon is not flexible, neither is Zorro or Berkshire or any of the big guys. There's a ton of room for smaller distributors with geographic reach, good data and systems, and access to a huge assortment who can be flexible too. I think we would classify being flexible as part of the complexity of an offering, right? If you're able to be flexible, then you're able to handle complex demands. It's the opposite of standardization, right?
Right. We have another question on, would you do as staples? And I'm not sure exactly what that means, or overall, or as two parts, retail and then direct business. I guess this is, as it pertains to the Veris Berkshire combination.
Okay. What would you do at Staples? So if I was running Staples.
Oh, I see. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So here's what I don't understand. And I'm not, look, we're in the wholesale distribution business. We're not retail experts. So the way I understand what happened is, I don't know, maybe a year ago, Staples again offered to buy Office Depot, and Office Depot said no. However, you can buy the retail stores if you want. We want to keep all the B2B stuff. I mean, that's when they went out and hired Prentice Wilson and the Amazon business team, right? And Staples, as I understand it, they have not yet agreed to buy the retail stores, but they generally said, okay, we are interested in buying the retail stores. I don't understand why anybody would want to buy a bunch of retail office supply stores. Now, they may have plans to turn them into service centers or add value in some other way. But to me, the products themselves that office supplies companies sells, those are going to marketplaces. And clearly, you know, and we've looked at like what happened to Staples sales as Amazon business grew. And, you know, a lot of people criticize Staples execution of some things. I think they just had a strategic problem. What happened to them vis-a-vis Amazon business is what happened to Kodak vis-a-vis the iPhone, right? And digital cameras. They just got they got superseded by new technology. And so I don't understand why Staples would want to buy retail stores. Maybe there's a reason. If I was running Staples, I would go after the B2B business like Office Depot is doing. I think, you know, and I would look at a collaboration because, like I said, my guess is the FTC would be friendlier to them now. I would look at, you know, building a marketplace. Really the same advice I give to Veris, I would give to Staples. But unless you can find some way to generate new value in a value proposition in those stores that's not going to continue to erode share to marketplaces, I wouldn't continue to double down in retail stores for office products or related items. That is,
and Ian, is that based? So when we talked about distributor branches, we view that as a place to impart expertise and value add. And is it your view that what happens in the Staples stores, there's less propensity for that?
Yes. And I know Staples has a B2B division, but I think that office supplies, generally speaking, are not that complex. I think it's not like if you go into a motion industries branch, right? I mean, they can rewind your motor and rebuild things, and they've got in-depth expertise, and they can help you design stuff and find highly technical solutions, run highly technical products. Same is true of Blackhawk Industrial Supply. Same is true of Radner and a bunch of others, right? I mean, these are companies that have very technical products for customers facing very technical problems. That's just not office supplies. It's just not. And so I just think it's easier to get that share if you're a marketplace than it is to come after hardcore industrial products. So yeah. Okay. Do we have any other questions? I think we're about done, aren't we?
About done. Yeah.
So, okay, good. Well, look, we've had a great attendance today. We would invite all of you. You can communicate with us. We are not an investigative journalist organization. We will keep confidences. So if you would like to talk to us, please feel free to reach out. We enjoy those conversations. Thanks so much. This is probably as interactive an audience as we've had in a long time, Jonathan. So it was great to have you all here. We really appreciate it. We will be back, let's see here, on January 12th. Our next episode, where did it go here? Okay, our next episode is January 12th, Innovating the Physical Store. So this is related to what we talked about today with special guest Mark Dancer, who's an NAW fellow, a brilliant guy. He literally wrote the book on facing the forces of change for the NAW. That's the National Association of Wholesaler Distributors. That episode will be brought to you by Epicor. As usual, we have a new sponsor, Cavallo, who will be working with us for the next several episodes. So thank you for Cavallo for your support. Please don't miss that episode. On February 2nd, we have the first part 1 of the 2022 State of E-commerce, brought to you by Optimizely. You can see all of our events and see our content on distributionstrategy.com. You can look at the events under the cleverly named tab called Events. You can reach us down by our contact information below. Jonathan, as always, it's been great working with you, my friend.
Mutual, Ian Heller.
Great. All right. Hey, thanks, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, a grand start to your new year. We'll see you in January. Thanks very much, and goodbye.